You're the only person who's ever really taken care of me.
Part 2 of the Foster series finale has arrived and has transported us to Turks and Caicos, so let's break down the episode right here on What Happened. Hey, you lovely people, Lisa here, and we are just one episode closer to the end of the Fosters. So the second part of the 3-part finale finds our characters finally arriving in Turks and Caicos for Brandon's wedding, and let's just say it's an episode full of interruptions, confrontations, and well, for all of you who still ship Browley in some sort of way, this episode does find a lot of the two of them talking, and of course there's a cliffhanger at the end that makes us think Callie's kind of going to Brandon's door, but yeah, that'd just be too obvious in my opinion, and she's totally knocking on someone else's door, right? But whose door? That is the question, but we'll get there when I talk about the end of this episode. First, before our family even sets foot at the hotel at Turks and Caicos, they run into drama already with Corey's mother. Corey's mom did actually show up to court and completed her 30-day rehab and other classes, so the judge granted her unsupervised visits. That's not the real problem here, though. She's afraid that Steph and Lena are going to take Corey out of the country for the wedding and they won't bring him back, so the judge rescinds permission for them to take Corey to the wedding, so unfortunately he has to go stay with the Fisher family for a few days. Let's just say that Steph and Lena are not happy, and it is not a good way to kick off this trip. I mean, it puts Steph in quite the mood. The family does include Corey, though, on FaceTime throughout some of the activities. Of course, Eliza's conservative parents continue to rub everyone the wrong way. Pretty much the first thing they say to Steph and Lena when they see them at lunch is about Corey, and then they're being snooty about the terms real mothers and fathers, and you know, how it must be weird for Anna to be married to Mike, Steph's ex, and all of this. And you know what? Steph just handles it in her pure signature Steph way.
Yes, I'm glad that we are having a small, intimate wedding. Can you imagine if you had to explain us to all of your friends? Can you imagine? Did you see that?
Yeah.
You let that back tattoo fly, honey. You do not change for those judgmental people. I mean, look, I understand, you know, people have different views. They're not always going to agree on things, but there's also this line of being respectful, listening, and learning to people that are different from you and believe different things than you. These parents, Eliza's parents, to me, just belittle and shame Steph and Lena and their family the entire time, and that's why I'm not a big fan of them. Steph and Lena do their special toast and slideshow at the rehearsal dinner, and they welcome Eliza to the family, and it's actually super sweet. But don't worry, our stiff, rich one-uppers just have to outdo the moms, so they decide to give Eliza and Brandon their wedding gift early, a dope 3-bedroom condo in Santa Monica that they'll pay to also furnish. Brandon and Eliza will just have to worry about property tax and some other bills. Talk about a dream. I will marry into that family. Just kidding, I will not marry into that family unless Jamie's available, because he seems like the only sane one in this family right now. As the kids go off to have their bachelor and bachelorette parties, Eliza's parents and Steph and Lena talk again, and we learn that Lena has been asked to run for state assembly, but she doesn't quite know if she's going to run yet, since it would mean selling the house, packing up, and moving. Eliza's parents then ask Lena if she'll be running for a Democratic seat, to which the answer is yes, and of course Steph snarkily says she hopes that they'll have their support. I'm honestly gonna miss Steph. I really hope she pops up in the spin-off more than, you know, what they're alluding to. When it comes to Jesus, he's single and totally ready to mingle, especially when he meets Jaden, one of Eliza's friends and bridesmaids. Mariana, though, gets a text from Emma who says she still misses Jesus, so Mariana does her best to pretty much be a cock blocker and keep Jaden and Jesus apart. So much so that she tells Jaden Jesus is gay. I mean, well, technically she just says her brother is gay. She never specifies which brother, even though we all know she knew exactly which brother Jaden was asking about. Mariana also dances in between the two at the club, which is just kind of hilarious. All I know is that I'm just glad Jesus shaved off that crazy beard. Anyway, it gets to be too much though, and Jesus finally pulls Mariana aside, and he really digs into her, letting her have it, pretty much telling her that everything is her fault because he'd rather not have known about Emma's job offer because at least he'd still be with her. He pretty much says she can't keep her mouth shut, she ruins everything, and he's ready to just start looking out for himself and living for himself. He also says that when Mariana finally decides which one of her multiple job offers she's going to choose, that he hopes she picks the one that's furthest away. Look, I get the frustration with Mariana. She's unfortunately built a reputation for herself. She's pretty immature. Even at one point in the episode, Callie's even like, oh, it must have been Mariana who told, when in fact this time it actually wasn't. Sometimes Mariana really does have that person's best interest at heart, but because that is less than the amount of times that she's had her own selfish needs in front. It just kind of like trumps that, and yeah, even when she's trying to do good, it just turns out bad. And she just ends up looking selfish, and hopefully this is the beginning of that change, though, in Mariana, because honestly, I've had a lot of that in the show the past 5 seasons, and I'm kind of over it, and if that spills over to in this spin-off, I'm not sure I can handle that Mariana anymore. Well, that fight with Jesus does leave Mariana alone, but her night does start to get better thanks to Matt. Earlier in the episode, though, things weren't looking so good because they were still awkward between her and Matt, especially when one of the other bridesmaids showed an interest in him. That causes Mariana, of course, to go on the defensive and tell that girl that Matt gave her crabs. Yeah, and then Matt confronts Mariana about spreading that whole thing. And we learn that it turns out he didn't cheat on Mariana. She had actually broken up with him on the phone, but he did actually go run to someone else right away. But he also says he didn't give her crabs, so we got this whole crabs mystery going on. Either way, they still have to do something for Brandon, and it turns out that Eliza has asked the two of them to sing something at the rehearsal dinner that Brandon wrote. Well, I'll get to that song in a minute because it gets kind of awkward, but it's kind of undeniable the feelings that Matt and Mariana have for each other when they are singing this beautiful song. And then Matt finds Mariana crying alone in the club, and he says that, that other girl is not the one he wanted to take back to his hotel room. Mariana is the one he wants to take back to his room. Now, we don't actually see if those two do go back to their room for some makeup fun or not, but we do see that Jesus and Jaden wanted their room to have some fun. As for Jude, he's happy the drinking age where they are is 18. He tells Callie that he's convinced Carter is gay and how he's been with a lot of guys who have girlfriends, and that prompts Callie to bring up Jude's PrEP pills and to make sure that he's actually being safe and doing okay. Jude, though, gets pretty defensive and says he's been responsible and you wouldn't treat him this way if he was a girl on birth control and all of this, and you know what? He tells her to not be so uptight since, she hasn't seemed to have gotten any in 5 years. It also seems like he's pretty mad that they're not really as close anymore as they used to be, and they've barely talked in the past 5 years except for the surface level texts. Jude does end up hanging out with Carter and having a ton of fun on the beach, and of course, watching like a hawk from the shore is Carter's dad. And we later see him ask his wife if Jude is the gay one. Looks like they're kind of worried about how closely Carter's hanging out with Jude. I feel like they're the kind of family that knows that their son is gay and sends him to like a conversion therapy or some kind of therapy to, convince this kid that he's not. Therefore, Carter is overcompensating, trying to be this big masculine guy. I feel like that's what's going to play out in the final episode. Either that or the boy has a lot of other issues. When Steph and Lena finally ask Jude if he's okay, Brandon interrupts, and it's like, really, Brandon, another interruption with bad timing. So Jude just ends up walking away, but he thinks that because the moms actually finally showed an interest in asking how he was and if he was okay, he thinks Callie told them about his pills, but she says she didn't. She just says, it's pretty obvious, dude, you're not okay. Jude just says, you know what, I'm fine, but I'm fine we all know is code for I'm actually not fine, I just don't want to tell you what my problems are. Later at the club, Jude sees a wasted Carter trying to hit on a girl, and so Jude takes Carter upstairs to sleep it off, just like we saw Callie do for him last episode. Carter then kisses Jude, and while everything leading up to this makes it seem like Jude would totally have jumped on that opportunity, he actually pushes Carter away and tells Carter, you know what, you're drunk, sleep it off. And Carter reacts by just breaking down and crying and saying that he is messed up. But Jude tells him he's okay, and Carter asks Jude to stay and just sit until he falls asleep, to which Jude does. Now let's get to our Brandon Callie Eliza drama. Brandon has asked Callie to take a look at that prenup, and so she's passed it on to one of Aaron's friends who's more of an expert in that area. Either way, she says Brandon should not sign this prenup. Brandon then gets a call being asked to score a short film, and that score is due in 2 weeks. And let's just say Eliza's not happy to learn that he has brought his work to their wedding, and she thinks it's just going to distract him from the wedding, or I'm pretty much thinking she's just thinking it's going to distract his attention away from her, which she does not like. Now, after overhearing Callie and Mariana talking at the end of the last episode about Brandon being Callie's first love, it's made Eliza even testier, and she of course keeps giving Callie some death stare looks throughout this whole episode. Eliza's anger grows when she learns that Brandon showed the prenup to Callie, and now she thinks Callie hates her even more. Eliza's just like, you know what, we're never getting divorced, so don't worry about the prenup, don't sign it. But Brandon says that if he doesn't hear back by the end of the day, he'll sign the prenup. As the night goes on, Brandon and Eliza continue to bicker as Callie tells Brandon to just stand up to Eliza's parents, and she also asks why Eliza just doesn't stand up to her own parents. Eliza's brother Jamie continues his flirting with Callie, and we learn that Callie did get offered a clerkship position with Judge Wilson, but she's still holding out for that other judge who she shares more beliefs with. Callie also expresses how she hasn't been interested in anyone in a while. She's not sure if she's ready to, be interested in Jamie. And he's like, oh, what if I just wanted to be friends with you? So then we see them kind of just being friendly to each other, being friends, and they're getting along real well. And I like the dynamic between these two. Also, he kind of gets bonus points for telling Brandon to not sign the prenup because it's not fair to Brandon, and it seems like Jamie actually knows how awful his parents are. At the rehearsal dinner, Matt and Mariana end up singing Love Will Light the Day, which, if you remember, is the song that Brandon asked Callie to sing with him back in season 3. And if you didn't remember, the show has handy flashbacks for you, so you do remember. As this song is being sung, we see Callie and Brandon, of course, remember the good times and glance at each other from across the table. And of course, if you pan just another little inch over, you see someone else has noticed, and that is Eliza with her glares and stares. Callie does her best, though, to be nice to Eliza, and she even tells Eliza that her friend says the prenup isn't fair for Brandon, and she thought that Eliza should be the one to tell Brandon. Eliza then brings up Brandon being Callie's first love, and if that's why Callie doesn't want him to marry her, because Callie still has feelings for him. Cue another interruption here as Jesus and the guys from the bachelor party walk in before we get Callie's response to this question, and we see the bachelor and bachelorette parties merge, which just makes it even more plain awkward. Brandon continues to drink and he starts to really think things through, and he and Eliza have a big fight. Brandon's pretty mad Callie didn't tell him to not sign the prenup and went straight to Eliza, but then he's also like, what strings are attached to this awesome condo? Why do you want to be with me? He basically just starts blowing up and being like, hey, I'm not so sure about this wedding. And Eliza just kind of says, you're drunk, let's sleep this off. And she tells him to just go work on his score. Callie then ends up seeing Brandon sitting alone at the pool, so she sits with him and lets him know that Eliza knows about their relationship from the past. And Callie thinks Mariana maybe told her. And this is an instant where Mariana is actually wrongfully accused. Anyway, Brandon and Callie talk, and Brandon says he doesn't know if he wants to marry Eliza, he's not sure if she's the one, and all of this, cold feet stuff. And all of this is kind of because Eliza doesn't get him, he says. And of course, Callie's the only one who does get him. And Brandon says Callie's also the only one who's ever really been there for him and taken care of him, and that he trusts her most in the world, to which she says ditto to all of that. They then go to their own separate rooms and lay in their bed and longingly look at the ceiling. We then see Callie get up and go knock on someone's hotel door, and at the same time we see Brandon here knock on his door and get up to go open it. So of course, they're trying to make us think that these two are going to each other's doors, and of course they end the episode before we actually get to see who exactly is at Brandon's door. Like I said, they of course want us to think it's Callie going to knock on Brandon's door and be like, you know what, I love you, don't get married. Yeah, I'm pretty confident that's not who's at his door though, and Callie's probably knocking on someone else's door. First instinct would be that Callie is going to knock on Jamie's door to maybe be like, you know what happens at the wedding stays at the wedding, let's just have some fun. And yeah, not that it would be awkward that she's hooking up with Brandon's future brother-in-law. This family, everything seems to stay in the family. Kind of weird. But I actually don't think that she is running to Jamie's door. And if she was, who knows? Maybe it's not about a hookup. She seems like she actually is able to really talk to Jamie, and maybe she just wants to talk everything out. I'm actually rooting, though, for Callie to show up at Eliza's door so that these two can really just sit down, clear the air, have a real heart-to-heart, and maybe we'll learn more about the real Eliza. The shell of, there's this nice girl in there who's hidden behind this dark shell, and she's got to let her guard down, and I think these two could actually really bond. Now, as far as who's at Brandon's door, not quite sure. I feel like that could be anybody. So, what did you all think of the second part of this series finale? I know there's still some people who want Brandon and Callie together, but knowing how much they love their family, how weird of a situation that would make, I honestly think that they are past that. I think they're just best friends who really care about each other, and obviously with a wedding and all that, feelings are brought up. They've said it a million times in this episode, but I think it's just remembering what they were and then being like, okay, we've grown from this, let's move forward. Plus, seeing as how David Lambert is not confirmed to be in the spinoff, it'd be weird to set that up as another relationship and then not have it carry over into the spinoff. So I'm just going for this being a way for these two to get closure in this last episode that's going to come up. Now, here's what we're left with before the final episode. Matt and Mariana possibly reconciling, possible budding romance between Callie and Jamie. Carter seems to really be dealing with his own issues that he's been bottling up. He says he's messed up, so we gotta wait to see if that's because he's in the closet or if there's other issues that he has. We also have the moms trying to figure out what to do about Corey, as well as Lena's offer to run for the state assembly and possibly move the entire family. And by entire family, I think pretty much everybody's moved out but Corey. And of course, this wedding, will it happen or will it not?
I'm freaking out, Dad. We might have to call it off. Are we still getting married?
All right, that's it for this episode of What Happened. Let me know your thoughts on this episode. Who do you think was at Brandon's door and whose door was Callie at? Will this wedding actually happen? Then be sure to come back tomorrow night as we discuss the final part and series finale of The Fosters. Subscribe so you don't miss my recap. Hit that thumbs up. Check out more videos over here. And yeah, I'm Lisa. Thanks for hanging out with me and sharing the Foster love.